Hello everyone, thank you so much for clicking on this video. We're going to be talking about SawX, the final movie in the franchise. I've done all the reviews for all the Saw movies leading up to this here. So this is a spoiler review. Let's get straight into it here. Now, before we dive into all the movie review and stuff like that, I just want to quickly point out and introduce the newest member, Billythepuppet here. Now, I saw it in like the US. They have these popcorn buckets with like the Jigsaw helmet with the eyes lighting up. I don't know what happened with Canada, but they only have like the drink topper. But with this one, honestly, it's pretty cool. You've got him doing this. Get your minds out of the gutter. And we've got him doing the exorcism here like this. I don't know what to tell you guys. Canada got the short end of the stick here, but I thought this was really cool. But when it comes to SawX, now you saw it in a thumbnail, you're seeing it in the title of this video. Could this possibly be the best sequel since the original? Could this be Saw being back? Now, I gotta say to you, I absolutely loved this movie. For me personally, think it's the best movie since the original. Just so much things about it, like everything just worked so well with this movie. The traps, the characters, the personality between John Kramer and Amanda, and we'll talk about all of this because like I said, this is a spoiler review. So if you haven't seen the movie, this is all spoilers. So definitely go check out the movie, come back to the review. And if you have seen the movie and you are coming back later on, welcome back. Hope you enjoyed the movie as much as I did. But with this one, it's definitely going back to the roots of Saw. 100% it's more grounded, it's more trap focused, because normally like lately the last couple of movies, especially like Spiral and you got Jigsaw and then you got Saw 3D and even like the latest ones, they were all just focusing on like you got the detective storyline and then you got somebody going through the games and going through the motion. Sometimes they had like escape room vibes with all these characters just doing the Saw games, so it didn't really feel like leaning towards like Saw 1 or Saw 2 or even like Saw 3 in a way. This was just like all detective work and then Saw games. And even like with the Saw games too, especially during like the later periods, is that the Saw traps were just unwinnable. You're either stuck in this situation and then there's no way to escape. Ask the person who murdered Hoffman's sister, ask the teacher from Saw 4, and it just kind of took the fun out of the Saw traps. Now, one of my biggest issues too is that like in, for example, like Saw 6 and Saw 7 is that you've got these people going around doing these games and other people are dying because of these people's choices. So like the people that are in the trap, for example Saw 6, when you've got the guy, the insurance guy, having to pull on like these ropes to save one or the other, or the carousel trap, or like in Saw 7 with Bobby throwing the key to somebody that's blindfolded, which still mind blows to me. So that kind of just took a sting out of it. So with this one, I just love, in terms of like the Saw traps, they were much more like John Kramer type of traps. But we start off with like the opening of the movie. They show you like John Kramer in the hospital. So this is taking place in between Saw 1 and Saw 2. He's just doing the regular checkup for his hospital. You see him more of like in a vulnerable state, which really elevated this movie. Like you saw John Kramer as not Jigsaw, but the person John Kramer. And so he's in the hospital in the US, he's getting like these scans, he's doing the hospital appointment, he's in the hospital, he sees this patient laying there, and then one of the janitors, one of the cleaners, is actually going through like the drawer, seeing a watch, seeing a ring, and then we suddenly see him in this trap that's been advertised with like the tubes for the eye. He has to literally like twist the lever so that his fingers like bend back. I think they break his fingers. He's not able to do it in time, and so his eyes just like get sucked out, which with the Saw movies, you're always like looking at it like, oh, will I be able to escape this trap? Will I be able to win this trap? And honestly, I feel like this one, most people would be able to do it. Like all you're doing is like pulling your finger. You know what? Scratch that. I don't think I would be able to do that. But we actually find out that he just imagined this whole trap. So it was sort of like a cop out, which normally I'd feel a certain type of way, because like you had that in like Saw 7, like the final chapter, like Jill having this vision or dream of Hoffman killing her, and then it wakes up and it finds a dream of that. But with like Jigsaw, this one, you get the satisfaction of the trap, even though he's not really in the trap in itself, so I wasn't too fussed about that. But then we move on. He's in this focus group. They're talking about like their experience with all of this, and I'll be real with you, like this kind of hit more home with me than normal, just because I've known somebody that's going through chemo, so I kind of know like the experience in terms of like what family members must be going through and that kind of stuff. So this one kind of like hit more home to me than it would have done. But we see this person, he explains to them that he's in like the stage 4 of this pancreas cancer, and so the next time John Kramer sees this person, he's just full of life, all well, up and about. And we come to find out that he explains to John that there's this new treatment going on off the books. He did it in Norway. He showed him this scar and says that he's like fully healed. And we come to find out that, as we saw it in the trailer, where John Kramer messages these people, emails them, sends his information, sends his money, goes to Mexico so that he can take part in this treatment. Now, for most of like the first 40 minutes, as you know, like it's a very like slow pace build up of like these characters, which normally I would be a bit annoyed with, but with this one it just works, because with this movie, it's not two separate things going on at once. John Kramer, the front and center of it, he's going and you're seeing him, like I mentioned, in this vulnerable state. He's in Mexico. He's talking to like the people that you see that are part of like the scam, because we come to find out that it is a scam. So he meets a taxi driver, the two people in the van, which I honestly thought was so strange. Like if you're going for like an off the books treatment, that's a red flag when you've got people pointing guns at you, shoving you in a van, and like him just being such a vulnerable man, old man, getting put in a van. You just felt so bad for him. But you meet the taxi driver, you meet Gabriella, get introduced to Valentina, and we get then introduced to like Mateo. So they're going through these stages. He even gets introduced to another person that's going through the same thing with his throat. So then they're explaining everything, what's going to happen. They keep him awake. He's laying down. He sees a screen of like this brain surgery that's taking place. So they think that he's all healed. He's bandaged up and he's got this like new lease of life. He thinks that he's healed. There's even one point where he's like sitting in the park, he's drawing, I believe it was the bear trap on his notepad, but then he just rips it up and throws it in the bin. But he's just got like more of appreciation. He ends up going to buy a tequila bottle so they can give it back to like that Gabriella girl, because she told him that you can have like a shot of tequila as a celebration. So then once he goes back to the place, he sees that it's been abandoned. Pictures on the frames have been smashed up. He goes to the same lab where they did the surgery, comes to see that the video that he was looking at while they were operating and stuff, the brain surgery that he saw, which he thought was for him, comes to find out that it was actually a video, like a pre-recorded, like a step-by-step on how to do brain surgery, coming to realize that it's a scam. And you just see that vulnerability of him. You genuinely feel sorry for Tobinbell, for John Kramer. He's done some fucked up things, like case in point with Jeff in Saw 3, but this, you just really felt bad for him here. So he ends up, like, you see him talking to a detective, obviously Detective Hoffman, and him and Amanda, which again are a really great return with Amanda. So he ends up taking the taxi driver that initially took him to the place. He ends up setting him in a trap where he's like, his hands are taped up with like these knives. He's strapped to like this backboard. He ends up using the knife hand to rip the rope, and that causes the trap to stall, where he has bombs placed on each arm and he has to like use that knife to like cut the skin off. And he ends up doing that. He ends up saving himself, and essentially, as we see in like a flashback, he spills the beans on everything with the rest of the crew here. So then Amanda goes by step, taking out every single person that was part of this elaborate scam. But what I really liked as well throughout these whole sequences is that in terms of like the other ones, like Mateo and Gabriella and Valentina, there wasn't much tension building. They were able to like capture them. But with like the main one, the main doctor, with her, the tension building in that sequence when she's at home and she's like going around the house because she hears somebody, and then you just see like the security footage of somebody on the rooftop throwing something from the balcony, and then she's running in the car, and then you've got John Kramer and Amanda like ambushing her. That was a really nice sequence of events. So they wake up, and this is what I really enjoyed about this movie too, is that like normally, like you mentioned, like you've got Billythepuppet and you've got these voice recordings, they're people are always having to go around each room and finding out what to do. Whereas this one, you've just got like Amanda in there, John Kramer in there, they're explaining what's happening. And again, you see the emotion in John Kramer, which I really liked about this movie. You really get that emotional side of John Kramer and the fury and rage that he had for these people scamming everybody. And even like Amanda too, like this is a more toned down Amanda, which I really love. Like I wish we got to see more of this, because even like the little like lines that she was throwing in there, which I found hilarious, about like how they need to like listen to the rules, how when he says that the key is inside this box and she's like, it's a figurative key, like just she was throwing in like great lines where if you're a fan of the franchise you would have really enjoyed it. And so essentially what happened throughout the movie is, you know, like each trap, like every single trap, every single person went through the trap. So you got Valentina, who had to like chop off her own leg and then use this tube to like suck out everything in order for like the scale to be balanced for her to be free. Otherwise her head would have been chopped off by the saw, which she's not able to do it in time, and so her head gets chopped off. Matteo has to use brain surgery because he was a brain surgeon. He has to literally pull out a piece of his brain. He has to use a saw to like open up his head, pull out a piece of brain, and then put it in a jar. The brain will dissolve the acid, which will then like lever everything to like release a key for him to like use to unlock, but he's not able to make it in time. And this mask like this, I believe it's like from Mexican heritage mask, just comes and like just closes on his face and kills him. And then you've got Gabriella, where one foot is chained up and one hand is chained up, and so she's like lifted on the floor. You've got this radiotherapy on her, and so she has to break her arm, break her feet in order for her to like slip out of the chain and fall, which she ends up actually doing. And so then before we dive into like the third act, which again I really love the third act, I do want to talk about like Amanda and John Kramer, because throughout the movie it's building up like John is going to be dying, Amanda's going to be the one taking over. But like I said, you see the more sensitive side of John Kramer and like the more sensitive side of Amanda, which I thought was just a brilliant choice for the characters. Like Amanda, like I said, throughout the Saw 2, especially in Saw 3, she's sort of this over the top, like pushing your buttons character. With this one, she's more toned down. They did her dirty with the haircut, I'll be honest, but she was fantastic in this movie. Really done well in terms of like her character and like how she was portrayed and what she was going to do throughout the movie, and that vulnerability as well with her and John Kramer. I think that really added a balance to the movie in itself. And so then we get to the third act, so you get to like that main doctor. So the person that John Kramer actually met during the surgery, the one that had like the throat thingy, turned out to be her partner, because he comes in like during the traps, and so you're thinking that he's also angry with these people. He has a gun, he wants to shoot them because they've tricked him. And so then we come to find out like this twist, and honestly this did catch me off guard. We come to find out that person is actually this main doctor's lover, boyfriend, whatever you want to call it. They end up forcing John Kramer and Amanda to like chain themselves up. So John Kramer is in the trap that the doctor was supposed to be in, Amanda chained up, and then this boy that John met earlier, they force him to come into the room. And so the doctor ends up killing Gabriella by like stamping her neck. They force the boy into the trap. So the trap is, you've got John Kramer laying down on one side, the boy laying down on the other side, and then this blood is just being poured. So they have to pull the lever, which whoever pulls the lever, the other one will stop the blood from pouring them. So this boy, heroically and such a standout character, is pulling the lever to stop it with John Kramer. John Kramer is doing the same thing. And one flaw and one critique I'll have is because with this, the only thing that made this movie work or made the trap work is because the doctor and her lover end up deciding, okay, let's go get the money now. So if they would have just stood there, I feel like you're relying a lot on like that, just them wanting to go get the money, because if they didn't get the money, what would have been the decision there? So they had to rely on that a bit, which you kind of get from time to time with some of the traps, which honestly is not a huge deal, just a minor nitpick. But they again decide to go towards getting the money. So they go to the room like that John Kramer and Amanda was in when they're watching over the trap. The timer goes off, and what baffles me is that like the timer goes off, you're just looking around, you're still looking for the money, not knowing where the money is. Then like the door ends up closing, so you had about like maybe 30 seconds to get out of the room once you see the timer, especially knowing Jigsaw, knowing John Kramer. So that I find hilarious. But the door ends up closing, and so these two people are now trapped in the room with this poisonous gas coming inside. And so the only way to survive this is like there's a little gap in one of the walls where you stick your head in. You have to fight for the survival. So she ends up killing her lover, forcing him to stab himself using a piece of glass. She ends up sticking her head out, and that's when you get that great twist. You get the reveal, like they actually end up like unlocking themselves from the chain. They end up escaping, and a really nice moment, because with John losing his child we find out in previous movies, we come to see that he's actually having this little father and son moment with this little boy, and like you sort of got like this family moment with Amanda, John and this boy, which was really wholesome to watch. So I have to give a huge standout to this. Like I said, John Kramer and Amanda were just really great chemistry, really just great together, and really more toned down, more vulnerable in that state that we get to see them. But the weird thing is that like we don't see what happened to the woman. Like she sticks her head out, the timer finishes, so we don't know exactly what happens next. So maybe this is going to be setting up for upcoming movies, but they end up escaping, and we then get to like the post-credit scene of the guy who supposedly went to like the focus group with having that stage 4 pancreas cancer, the one that had a scar. We end up seeing him in the same bathroom from Saw 1. And then you've got Detective Hoffman, and it honestly was so great to see Detective Hoffman. I don't know if they de-aged him or not, but just so great to see him and John Kramer together with this person being a victim of the trap and just ending the movie. So like I said, this just was a fantastic watch for me. I really enjoyed this movie and really had a great time with it. It really just brought that great element to Saw back. It brought you to the memories of Saw 1, Saw 2, like that enjoyability of it. In terms of the pacing, like I said, the first 30 to 40 minutes is all about getting to know him, his vulnerable state, going through like this chemo experience and going through like trying to find a way to survive. And so it's a little bit slow, but the pacing of the whole movie just pays off really well, because once it kicks in, it really kicks into high gear, and just everything is just going at you so fast. But it's just that great pacing that really works with the movie. In terms of like the cinematography and the coloring scheme, I mentioned it in my Saw 1 review, that little green tone in the scenes, you really get that more in this movie too. So you've just got that old school Saw feeling in it, compared to like the latest ones where it's just more 3D or more high tech kind of look to it. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but it's just not that like gritty, old school, grungy looking like atmosphere that you would experience in the first couple of movies from Saw. So I just really like that. It was such a nice touch. And also when it just comes to like the plot twist, the third act performances, I was a little bit worried during the third act, during like that bloodbath sequence, because like you're like, okay, well, is John Kramer really just like being this vulnerable person that's just not able to outthink people? But then like you get that little twist. Maybe it's not as great as like the twist from the first movie, arguably from the second movie too, with like the son being in the safe. But I still had a really fun time with this movie, a really, really enjoyable movie that if you're a fan of Saw, I think you'll really enjoy this movie. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below for those of you that have seen it. What your thoughts are about this. Where would you rank this as well throughout the Saw movies too? Keep an eye out on the channel, because there is going to be a tier ranking video for all the Saw movies, so definitely don't miss out on that. And again, I've done reviews for all the Saw movies from Saw 1 all the way up until Saw 9 Spiral Book of Saw. So I'll post a playlist somewhere around here so that you can check out those videos. But I thank you so much for watching. I thank you so much for listening. Looking forward to seeing you in the tier ranking video, but this is YK Reviews. Peace.